Hello, good morning once again. This is your professor, Rodelito Zazon, and welcome to our university virtual classroom. And under the UGE1 class, and the last lesson we had is about sequencing. So today we're talking about paragraphs. Okay, so let me move to that lesson. Where is it? Okay, for a while. There. Share, share, share. Where is my share? There. Okay, so I'll be sharing to you a slide from slideshare.net prepared by ladies Sanchez, Pinzon sisters, and Reynolds, Miss Reynolds. Okay, so the first, since we are dealing with reading, we have to understand how paragraphs work. So I know this has been discussed in your previous English classes, but I think it's worth reviewing for the time being, since we'll be dealing with more of this as time goes by. Okay, so I hope you enjoy the music. Imagine yourself being in a cafe and taking a sip of that precious, tasty coffee. Okay, so the types of paragraph. The paragraphs answer to the different types of text. We can find text descriptive, narrative, argumentative, and explanatory. So, of equal weight paragraphs: descriptive, narrative, argumentative, and explanatory. So, not necessarily a text contains uh, an alone type of paragraph. On the contrary, the paragraphs change in agreement to the needs of the topic. So, these can express ideas, they can also express emotions or opinions, and more, to explain and to demonstrate the key points or thoughts of a central idea. So let's begin with beginning paragraphs. I don't know, my throat is really dry. Okay, so the beginning paragraphs, they are those that with which it gives beginning. So a text can contain an introductory idea, a design, several, or even the principal idea of a text, and this function is fundamental. It raises the thesis, they attract the interest of the reader. So that's how important beginning paragraphs are. So again, they can attract the readers to read on. So by the effective beginnings that you may want to use, so we'll discuss that later. Then they can also introduce the main idea, or we call it the thesis statement, in the whole essay. Okay, so it summarized the topic or the thesis of the text. Then we also have transition paragraphs. They are those that serve to give a change in the topic or a bridge for the continuation of the text to the or to happen across. It uses expressions as in consequence, therefore, nevertheless, in spite of the previous thing, or between others. So these are your clues for you to determine that it is a transitional paragraph. So it serves like a bridge between ideas. Then we have these argumentative paragraphs. So they are those that are used to expose an argument, to support an opinion, or to refute the other one. So respect of the validity of an idea to convincing on a certain line of thought or action. So these types of paragraphs are very used in philosophical texts or even religious texts, political speeches, tests in which the conviction of the reader is looked upon or being put into question. So those were argumentative. So its purpose is to convince or to solicit agreement from listeners. Okay, next we have the conceptual or of definition paragraph. Okay. Um, to need the meaning of a term or to center a thought that will be in use hereinafter. Without these conceptual definitions, the readers cannot understand the author's ideas, so because of it, they are indispensable in the writings of technical and scientific type. So, in them, emphasis is done in the concept contained in a text, which can be a definition, idea, or thought of a certain author, who will be constantly used inside the rest of the text. So, there are chronological and descriptive paragraphs. So, when you say chronological, they are those who present diverse events or situations in a chronological way. So, these paragraphs enter other categories in turn, like in the case of narrative paragraphs where you present the events in a chronological way or according to how it happened. Of course, sometimes authors use some what they call this devices such as flashbacks, or they give an idea in the future of what will happen in the future. Okay, so flashbacks refer to events that happened in the past as we move along. So they give a background of what happened in the past. Okay, however, descriptive paragraphs in them they write each other by means of a logical and coherent criterion descriptions, same that they can belong to objects, events, or persons. So they describe uh, something, either a person, objects, or an event. We also have enumerative paragraphs. So these are those which uh, done in enumeration, which role can be an enumeration of ideas or the points of a series of ideas. It could be events or situations, the steps to continuing the diverse paragraphs of the instructive one, and in general anything, event or action that should be that it should enumerate, like for example in the cases in which it is necessary to do an hierarchic enumeration or etc. So they enumerate some things. Next, we have the clarifying, or we call it the explanatory paragraphs. So they are the paragraphs where there is done an explanation of ideas, points, or events. They are destined to clarify a part of the text that can be confusing or to offer to be interpreted badly. So they are an example of this type of paragraphs. So the notes of the books where you catch on misprints or confused ideas. So these paragraphs are in the habit of being numbered or having a symbol, star or asterisk, in a part of the text indicating the place of the note that explains the idea relating to the paragraph where there is inserted a symbol or the number of the note. So they clarify. And finally, we have expository paragraphs. So they present a certain information of a tidy way to belong exposed to the reader, exposing one or several ideas or concepts of an understandable way for whom he reads it. It is that one who presents some organized information. Okay, so expositories. Okay, the important word is explain. And finally, we have the narrative paragraphs. So this type of is used commonly in such genres as the novels, the journalistic text like the newspapers or magazines, the chronicles, the history, the story, and others. So in them there are described the facts, situations, and descriptions of prominent figures, usually of chronological form by means of the voice of the narrator. So the voice of the narrator could come in a form of first person, third person, or limited third person. So, or the omniscient narrator. So commonly they are inserted by other types of paragraphs as the paragraphs elucidative or those of dialogues. So these are examples of narrative paragraphs. So we see here a narrative comic strip. Then, so if you are to tell this as a story, you'll be using a narrative paragraph. And we have the dialogue paragraphs. These are those writings in the shape of dialogue, interacting two or more prominent figures, as well as or including the narrator. They are own of written interviews, so like newspapers, magazines, novels, and stories. So they make use of the colon to show who is speaking and what were the actual words that he spoke. So that's a dialogue paragraph. I think the dramas are written this way as well. Okay, then we have comparative and cause and effect paragraphs. So we'll be discussing comparative paragraphs later on or in the next lesson. But for now, let's understand what comparatives are. Comparatives consist of the expression of the similarities or differences that exist between two objects or phenomena, which usually we call this comparison and contrast. Comparison meaning to look for the similarities between two different items, and contrast means to look for the differences. So that's to be specific. But sometimes even the differences are called comparatives as well. So we compare beautiful and ugly, fat and thin, but in paragraph form. Okay, so look at the example there. So when you say cause and effect, they present a fact followed by the reasons that has caused it, or for the consequences that form from him stem. So David, for example, goes to school. So this is a cause and effect. Anyway, we will have lessons on detailed cause and effect paragraphs. Then we have inductive and deductive paragraph. What's the difference? So when we say inductive, the principal idea ultimately it begins with the prayers that express secondary ideas to come to a generalization or thematic idea as a conclusion to what has stated itself. So it means it begins from specific going to generalization. So that's inductive paragraph. For example, I could begin with family. The family of Mr. Sason went to the market to buy food, and they noticed that food, especially the meat, has risen sky high, and this has been the experiences of all the families in the Philippines. So we can conclude that the Philippines as a whole is suffering from high prices of food. So I began with the family and I ended up with the Philippines. So that's the inductive reasoning or inductive way of telling things. The deductive, however, we begin with the principal idea for his construction and it splits of a generalization then to appear in specific cases. Idea, generalization, then specific cases. So we can say that everything in the Philippines has gone sky high in terms of prices. So you begin from a general idea. Then one of the families that suffered this dilemma is the Sason family. So we went to the specifics. So that's how it goes. Then we have paragraphs closure or concluding paragraphs. So in this paragraph, it ends the habit of meeting of a topic or paragraph inside a text. They can offer conclusions concerning a treated topic. So the paragraph of closing goes at the end of the book or chapter and can put on a general summary of the ideas of the text. So this is the one that completes the essay. So we call it the concluding paragraph. Either it restates the thesis statement, it provides a summary, or it can give a certain conclusion to the whole thing. So that's it. So this is our bibliography for references. Thanks for listening, and I hope you uh, take notes while listening to these lectures. So see you again tomorrow for the discussion of comparisons. And God bless.